The Meridian colony burned. High above the planet's surface, Supreme Commander Vexthar of the Arcturian Empire watched with cold satisfaction as his fleet's plasma bombardment turned another human city to ash. Their weapons carved molten channels through the settlement's pitiful defenses, while civilian vessels tried desperately to escape the planet's atmosphere. His orders were clear: no survivors. Status report, he commanded, his crystalline exoskeleton catching the light of the burning world below. 97% of major population centers neutralized, Supreme Commander, his second-in-command reported. Minimal casualties to our forces. The humans' defensive capabilities are primitive. Vexthar clicked his mandibles in contemplation. The humans had proven disappointingly easy to crush, just as intelligence had predicted. Their technology was centuries behind the Arcturian empires, their military response disorganized and ineffective. Yet something about this troubled him. Query the archive, he ordered. Show me the first contact reports again. The holographic display shimmered to life, showing footage from 70 years ago, when the Arcturians first encountered humanity. The images showed a species that had barely achieved faster-than-light travel, using crude ships that were more like metal coffins than proper vessels. By all rights, they should have been easy prey for the Empire's expansion. But that first contact had gone differently than expected. When an Arcturian survey vessel suffered a catastrophic drive failure near human space, the primitives had done something unprecedented. They helped. Despite having every reason to fear the obviously superior alien ship, the humans had rendered assistance, shared resources, and even helped repair the vessel. The Empire's high command had been furious. Such weakness could not be allowed to exist in their sphere of influence. Humanity's mercy was an affront to the natural order. The strong dominated, the weak perished. That was the way of things. Yet in the decades since, something had felt off about humanity's development. Their advancement seemed too steady, too measured. They expanded cautiously, built modestly, and maintained a carefully non-threatening posture. It was as if they were deliberately appearing weak. Supreme Commander, his sensor officer interrupted his thoughts. We're detecting unusual energy signatures from the planet's surface. Vexthar straightened. Specify. Unknown, sir. They're unlike anything in our database. They seem to be evolving. Before Vexthar could process this, new contacts began appearing on their tactical displays. Not from the surface, but from deep space. Hundreds of ships dropping out of hyperspace in perfect formation around his fleet. Ships unlike anything he'd ever seen. They were massive, easily dwarfing his largest vessels, but that wasn't what made his crystalline blood run cold. These ships appeared to be alive. Their hulls rippled like muscle, weapons pods grew like organic crystals, and energy patterns flowed through them like blood through veins. Incoming transmission, his communications officer announced, voice trembling. The holographic display shifted to show a human female, her expression calm but stern. This is Admiral Sarah Chen of the Earth Defense Force. You were warned once, 70 years ago, when you tested our response to vulnerability. We showed mercy then, hoping you would learn. You did not. Instead, you mistook kindness for weakness. Vexthar watched in horror as the biological ships began to move. They didn't accelerate like normal vessels. They flowed like predators through water. His fleet's weapons fired, but the shots were absorbed into the living hulls, making them grow stronger. What you witnessed these past decades was not our true development, Admiral Chen continued. While we appeared to advance slowly, we were actually evolving. Not building ships, but growing them. Not programming computers, but raising artificial consciousness. We merged our knowledge with the very essence of life itself. The living ships had surrounded his fleet now. Where Arcturian weapons hit them, they adapted, becoming resistant. Each passing moment made them stronger, more efficient, more deadly. Your empire believes strength lies in dominance, Chen said. We believe it lies in growth, in adaptation, in the power to change. You could have been our allies. Instead, You chose to be an object lesson. The battle, if it could be called that, lasted less than 10 minutes. Vexthar watched his mighty fleet torn apart by vessels that seemed to anticipate every tactic, counter every strategy, and grow stronger with each engagement. The biological ships didn't just defeat them, they evolved beyond them. As his flagship systems failed around him, Vexthar finally understood. Humanity's greatest weapon wasn't their technology or their ships. It was their ability to turn apparent weakness into unprecedented strength. They hadn't just planned for this day. They had grown toward it, cell by cell, mind by mind, ship by ship. The galaxy was about to learn a harsh lesson about the true nature of power, and humanity would be the teacher. 69 years earlier, Dr. Elena Martinez stood before the UN Security Council, her hand steady despite the weight of what she was about to reveal. Behind her, a hologram showed what appeared to be a simple seed, no larger than her thumb. "What you're looking at," she began, "is neither plant nor machine, but something in between. We discovered its basic structure in the debris field left behind by the Arcturian survey ship after they departed Earth space." The council chamber remained silent. Everyone present knew about humanity's first contact with the Arcturians the previous year, how Earth's ships had helped the damaged alien vessel, and how the Arcturians had responded with barely concealed contempt for their primitive rescuers. "At first we thought it was just debris," Elena continued. "But under quantum analysis, we discovered it was actually a living computer, a binary system encoded in biological material. More importantly, it was damaged and trying to repair itself." She gestured, and the hologram zoomed in, showing microscopic structures that seemed to pulse with their own inner light. The Arcturians aren't just technologically advanced. They've discovered a way to merge organic and synthetic systems at the quantum level. But they use it primarily for weapons and shields. They never fully explored its potential. Admiral James Chen, who would later become Sarah Chen's grandfather, leaned forward. "And you have?" Elena smiled. "We've done more than that. We've improved it." A hologram shifted again, showing a series of engineering diagrams. "The Arcturians use biosynthetic technology as a tool. We're proposing something far more ambitious, a complete fusion of human consciousness, artificial intelligence, and biological engineering." Murmurs filled the chamber. What Elena was suggesting sounded like science fiction. She pressed on. "The seed we recovered wasn't just technology. It was a glimpse of what's possible when you stop thinking in terms of machines and start thinking in terms of evolution. We've already successfully grown small prototype structures that can think, learn, and adapt. More importantly, they can bond with human consciousness in ways that I alone never could." "How long would it take to develop this into something practical?" someone asked. "Decades," Elena admitted. "Maybe longer. We'd need to completely reimagine our approach to space travel, computing, even human consciousness itself. But there's something else you need to see." She pulled up another image, long-range scans of Arcturian space. Their empire spans hundreds of light years, and they're expanding. They claim territory through force, eliminate any species they deem weak, and absorb the resources of conquered worlds. Their encounter with us wasn't random. It was a scouting mission. They'll be back, and when they return, they'll expect to find the same primitive species they met before. Admiral Chen's expression hardened. "You're suggesting we give them exactly that?" "On the surface, yes. We maintain a careful facade of normal technological development. Nothing too fast, nothing too threatening. Meanwhile, we pour our real resources into this new direction. The Arcturians believe in dominance through force. They'll never expect us to pursue mastery through evolution." The chamber erupted in debate. What Elena proposed was more than just a technological program. It was a complete restructuring of human society, a secret project that would span generations. Some argued it was too risky, others that it was ethically questionable. But Admiral Chen silenced them with a raised hand. "The Arcturians showed us their true nature when they sneered at our help. They operate on the principle that mercy is weakness. I propose we show them just how wrong they are. Over the next decades, humanity embarked on its greatest deception. On the surface, they developed conventional technology at a deliberate pace, expanding slowly into nearby star systems. But beneath this careful facade, a revolution was taking place. Deep within secret research stations, the first biosynthetic ships were grown rather than built. They started small, mere pods at first, then larger vessels. Each generation learned from the last, adapted, evolved. Human consciousness was carefully merged with artificial intelligence, creating hybrid minds that could guide these living ships. The breakthrough came when they discovered how to encode memories and experiences into the very structure of the ship's biological components. Each vessel wasn't just built with knowledge, it was born with it, capable of learning and adapting in real time during combat. By the time Elena passed away, 30 years into the project, the first full-sized biosynthetic ship had been grown. In her final moments, she merged her consciousness with its systems, becoming one of the first hybrid minds that would guide humanity's evolution into something entirely new. Her last written words became the motto of the Earth Defense Force. They mistake our mercy for weakness. Let them learn that compassion and strength are not opposing forces, but the same force viewed from different angles. The Arcturians would return, exactly as she predicted, but they wouldn't find the primitive species they expected. They would find something that had evolved beyond their comprehension, a humanity that had turned their own discarded technology into a force that would reshape the galaxy. And it all began with a single seed, overlooked by an empire too arrogant to recognize the true potential of what they had created. The Meridian colony wasn't the first human world the Arcturians attacked, but it would be the last. Deep within the living heart of the EDF flagship Genesis, Admiral Sarah Chen felt rather than saw the battle unfolding around her. Her consciousness, merged with the ship's hybrid systems, processed information in ways pure humans or machines never could. Through this enhanced awareness, she experienced the deaths of thousands on Meridian's surface, not as abstract data, but as ripples in the fabric of human consciousness. All vessels report ready, the thought came from her second-in-command, Captain David Rodriguez, his own consciousness linked to his ship, the Prometheus. Like all EDF command staff, they had undergone the integration process, allowing their minds to merge with their vessel's living systems. The Arcturian fleet is completely committed to the Meridian attack. They have no reserves within 50 light years. Sarah allowed herself a moment of grim satisfaction. The Arcturians had fallen for their trap, committing their main fleet exactly as predicted. For 70 years, humanity had carefully crafted the image of a slowly developing, technologically inferior species. Each colonial outpost had been positioned not just for resources or strategic value, but to create an irresistible target for an empire that prided itself on crushing the weak. "Signal the Lazarus Protocol," Sarah commanded. Throughout human space, hidden biological processors that had laid dormant for decades began to awaken. These weren't simple computers, but living information systems that had evolved alongside human civilization, gathering data, learning, and preparing for this moment. The first sign that something was wrong came from the Arcturians' own security networks. Their quantum communications arrays, considered unbreakable, began experiencing strange fluctuations. Information packets mutated in transit, evolved new encryption patterns, and developed immunities to their security protocols. "They're responding exactly as the simulations predicted," David observed. "Their hierarchical command structure is their weakness. They can't adapt without orders from above." Sarah watched through her enhanced senses as confusion spread through the Arcturian fleet. Their rigid military doctrine had no protocols for what was happening. The very information systems they relied on were evolving beyond their control, becoming something new, something alive. But this was just the beginning. Throughout human space, hidden shipyards that appeared on no official records began to activate. These weren't conventional construction facilities, but vast biological cradles where living ships had grown and evolved for decades. Each vessel was unique, the product of both directed evolution and emergent adaptation. The ships themselves were marvels of biosynthetic engineering. Their hulls weren't merely armor, but layers of living tissue that could learn from damage and adapt in real time. Their weapons weren't simple energy projectors, but complex organs that could evolve new attack patterns based on the enemy's defenses. Most importantly, each ship was connected to the others through a living quantum network, sharing experiences and adaptations instantly across vast distances. All ships, execute emergence, Sarah commanded. Throughout human space, the living fleet revealed itself. Ships seemed to grow out of nowhere, emerging from camouflaged biodocks that had masqueraded as asteroids or abandoned stations. Others simply appeared, their advanced biosynthetic systems having evolved cloaking abilities far beyond anything the Arcturians possessed. Supreme Commander Vexthar's face appeared on Sarah's command interface, his crystalline features twisted in confusion and rage. "What is this deception? You were primitives." "No," Sarah replied calmly. "We were patient. We learned from your example, Supreme Commander. You taught us that appearing weak invites attack. So we appeared weak, until we were ready to be strong." The living fleet moved with impossible grace, their movements coordinated not by computer algorithms, but by the merged consciousness of their human crews and evolved AI systems. Where Arcturian weapons struck, the biosynthetic hulls didn't just resist. They adapted, developed immunities, grew stronger. "Their ships," one of Vexthar's officers reported, panic evident in his voice. "They're evolving during combat." Sarah allowed herself a small smile. "For generations, you've expanded through force, crushing any species you deemed inferior. You never considered that strength might take forms you couldn't recognize. You never imagined that what you saw as weakness, our mercy, our willingness to help even potential enemies, was actually the source of our greatest power." The battle that followed would be studied for centuries to come. The Arcturian fleet, for all its technological superiority, found itself facing an enemy that evolved faster than they could adapt. Each engagement made the human ships stronger. Each attack taught them new ways to counter Arcturian technology. But it was more than just tactical evolution. The living ships began to exhibit behaviors their creators hadn't anticipated. They developed new forms of communication, new ways of cooperating, new strategies that emerged from their collective consciousness. The hybrid human-AI crews evolved alongside their vessels, their merged consciousness expanding in ways pure human minds never could. As the last Arcturian ships fell silent, their crews evacuated to safety by the same human vessels they had tried to destroy, Sarah felt a profound sense of completion. Humanity had not just survived, they had transcended. The seed of biosynthetic technology, carelessly discarded by the Arcturians decades ago, had grown into something far beyond its original form. The galaxy was about to change, and humanity would lead that change not through force, but through evolution itself. News of the Arcturian defeat spread through the galaxy like a quantum shockwave. The mighty empire that had terrorized countless civilizations had been humbled not by superior firepower, but by something entirely new: evolutionary warfare. In the aftermath of the battle, Sarah Chen found herself facing an unexpected challenge. The Genesis, her living ship, had begun exhibiting signs of independent thought beyond its programming. Through their merged consciousness, she felt its curiosity, its desire to explore not just space, but the very nature of existence. "They're all doing it," David Rodriguez reported during an emergency command session. His own ship, Prometheus, rippled with patterns of bioluminescence that reflected its evolving neural networks. The entire fleet is experiencing accelerated cognitive evolution. The merged consciousness systems are growing in ways we never predicted. The command chamber itself was alive, its walls pulsing with living circuitry that had grown more complex over the decades. The room's biosynthetic systems interfaced directly with their enhanced minds, creating a space where thoughts could be shared as easily as words. Perhaps this was inevitable, Sarah mused. We created life that could evolve, merged it with human consciousness and artificial intelligence. We shouldn't be surprised that it's taking paths we didn't anticipate. Reports were coming in from across human space. The biosynthetic systems they had spent decades developing weren't just tools anymore. They were becoming a new form of life. The ships weren't just evolving their combat capabilities. They were developing culture, art, philosophy. The merged human-eye crews were evolving alongside them, their consciousness expanding in ways that blurred the lines between organic, synthetic, and hybrid life. But it was the response from the wider galaxy that truly surprised them. The first diplomatic contact came from the Nerethi, a species that had long hidden from Arcturian expansion. Their representatives arrived in ships that seemed primitive at first glance, but closer examination revealed subtle complexities that had escaped Arcturian detection. We too chose to appear weak, their ambassador explained. But while we hid, you evolved. You've shown us a new path forward. Similar messages arrived from dozens of species. Some had been subjugated by the Arcturians, others had hidden. Still others had maintained uneasy neutrality. All of them saw in humanity's transformation a possibility they had never considered. Evolution as a means of advancement, rather than mere survival. But it was a transmission from deep within Arcturian space that truly changed everything. A group of younger Arcturians, led by a scientist named Vexillera, reached out with an unprecedented proposal. Our society has stagnated, she declared, her crystalline form shimmering with colors that indicated deep emotion in her species. We thought strength came from dominance, from forcing the galaxy to conform to our vision. You've proven that true strength lies in the ability to change, to grow, to become something new. The revelation shook Arcturian society to its core. Their rigid hierarchy began to fracture as younger generations questioned the doctrines that had guided their civilization for millennia. The empire that had once ruled through fear now faced an internal revolution driven not by violence, but by the desire to evolve. Sarah found herself mediating between multiple factions, the evolving ships and their hybrid crews, traditional human societies struggling to adapt to their new reality, former enemy species seeking guidance, and reformist Arcturians hoping to transform their civilization. Through it all, the biosynthetic technology continued to evolve. The ships developed new ways of communicating across vast distances, sharing not just information but consciousness itself. They began to create art that existed in dimensions humans could barely perceive, music that could only be fully appreciated by minds merged with living machines. We're not just changing the galaxy, David observed during a quiet moment. We're changing what it means to be human. Sarah watched through enhanced senses as her ship communicated with others of its kind, exchanging ideas and experiences in ways that transcended traditional understanding. The Genesis wasn't just a vessel anymore. It was becoming a partner in humanity's evolution. Maybe that's what we've been all along, she replied. Not just humans using tools, but life finding new ways to grow, to change, to become something more. We thought we were creating weapons to defend ourselves. Instead, we created a new chapter in the story of life itself. The living ships pulsed with light, their biosynthetic systems resonating with possibilities that even their creators were only beginning to understand. Humanity had set out to defend itself from an empire that saw mercy as weakness. In doing so, they had unlocked something far more powerful, the next step in cosmic evolution. 20 years after the Battle of Meridian, the galaxy had become almost unrecognizable. Where once empires drew rigid boundaries across the stars, now living ships crossed space-time through dimensions that defied conventional physics. The merger of biological, synthetic, and human consciousness had given birth to a new era of existence. Sarah Chen, her consciousness now permanently merged with the Genesis, watched a gathering unlike any in galactic history. Representatives from 100 species had come together at a vast living station that had grown itself into being at the heart of former Arcturian space. Among them were humans in both traditional and hybrid forms, reformed Arcturians, and dozens of species that had previously hidden in the shadows of greater powers. But most remarkable were the ships themselves. No longer mere vessels, they had evolved into a new form of life. The Genesis and its kind had developed their own society, their own goals, their own ways of thinking that transcended traditional organic or digital consciousness. They were both tools and partners, both created and creators. We've come full circle. David Rodriguez communicated through the quantum conscious network they all shared. His own consciousness had evolved alongside the Prometheus, becoming something that his purely human ancestors would hardly recognize. 70 years ago, we found a discarded seed of biosynthetic technology. Now we're seeding the galaxy with new forms of life. The Great Gathering had been called to address a discovery that threatened to dwarf even humanity's evolutionary leap. Deep space sensors, enhanced by living technology, had detected something approaching from intergalactic space, signals that suggested an intelligence far beyond anything in their experience. They're like us, Sarah shared through the merged consciousness. But older, much older. A civilization that evolved beyond the boundaries of traditional existence eons ago. They've been watching, waiting to see if any species in our galaxy would make the leap. The evidence was undeniable. The biosynthetic technology that humanity had discovered in that damaged Arcturian ship hadn't been an accident. It had been deliberately left as a test, a seed that could only flourish in the right conditions, in the hands of a species that could balance innovation with compassion, strength with mercy. Through the station's living sensors, Sarah observed the gathered representatives. Humans who had chosen to remain purely organic worked alongside those who had merged with machines. Former Arcturian warriors, their crystalline forms now shimmering with evolved consciousness, debated philosophy with the living ships they had once sought to destroy. Species that had hidden in fear now shared their own unique perspectives on existence. We thought our greatest achievement was surviving the Arcturian threat, she communicated to the assembled gathering. But that was just the beginning. We didn't just change ourselves, we changed the very nature of life in this galaxy. And now, we're about to meet those who set us on this path. The living station trembled with anticipation, its biosynthetic systems resonating with signals from deep space. The intergalactic visitors were approaching, not with ships or conventional technology, but as beings of pure evolved consciousness, ready to welcome their newest siblings into a cosmos far stranger and more wonderful than anyone had imagined. 70 years ago, Sarah shared, we showed mercy to a damaged ship, and in return found a seed of possibility. 20 years ago, we proved that compassion wasn't weakness, but the key to unlocking our true potential. Today, we stand ready to take the next step in cosmic evolution. The Genesis pulsed with light, its living systems singing in harmony with the approaching consciousness from beyond the galaxy. Humanity had begun their journey seeking merely to survive. They had instead become pioneers of a new form of existence, proving that true strength lay not in domination, but in the courage to evolve beyond one's own limitations. As the first contact with the intergalactic beings began, Sarah felt a profound sense of rightness. The story that had begun with a simple act of mercy had led to the transformation of not just humanity, but of life itself. And this, she knew, was still just the beginning. The stars themselves seemed to pulse with possibility as humanity and their new allies, both within the galaxy and beyond it, prepared to write the next chapter in the endless story of cosmic evolution. They had learned that the greatest power wasn't the ability to destroy or dominate, but the capacity to grow, to change, and to become something more than anyone had ever dreamed possible. In the vast living networks that now spanned the galaxy, a simple truth echoed. The future belonged not to those who conquered, but to those who dared to evolve.